Again, my name is Allison Hayes. I'm a senior, and my project was on Microsoft Publisher. I studied a lot about Microsoft Publisher to advance the literary magazine. So in 8th grade, I did the Gifted and Talented program with Mrs. Collins, and she organized a writing club, and we wrote creatively as a group. We did poems, short stories. We shared our short stories with members of the group, and we got advice from Mrs. Collins and the other students. And when I came to the high school, I was disappointed that there wasn't a writing club. So my sophomore year, I decided to start a writing club with my freshman honors English teacher, Mr. Pranovich. So we write creatively, do a lot of the things that we did in 8th grade. And when I was a freshman, the seniors that ran the literary magazine had all graduated. So I decided to start the literary magazine and continue with it. So as a writing club, we publish the literary magazine and write for the literary magazine. So that's our goal. So for my senior project, I decided to learn more about Publisher so I could advance the appearance of the magazine and make it easier. So I read every chapter of Using Microsoft Publisher 2010 by Brian Posey. And after I finished every chapter, I wrote 1 to 3 pages of notes in a journal. And I used my notes to make a reference card that's in the orange and yellow sheet. And that includes tips that I used and that I learned from my studies. And through this project, I learned easier ways to format the literary magazine, and I found a lot of easier ways to publish it. And my final project was the 2013-2014 edition of the literary magazine, which I gave to you earlier. So probably the most important thing that I learned was about master pages. Before this project, I would put a text box under every page, like at the bottom of every page, and I'd put the title, like the the writer's block literary magazine. I'd put the edition, and I'd put the page number at the bottom of every page. And that was really time consuming, and I had problems with formatting. So what I learned was about master pages. It's basically a footer at the bottom of every page. So when you insert a page, it automatically puts the page number and the title and the edition. I also learned about inserting files. Before I did my publisher project, I would copy and paste every entry into the literary magazine. And with what I learned was I could insert the files directly from my flash drive, which was a lot easier and less time consuming. I also learned a lot about tables, and as you see on page 2, the table of contents, I used a table to put for the table of contents, and that was a lot less time consuming, and it was a lot easier to manage. I also learned about border art, which can be used for text boxes and tables. So an example of border art is on page 2, the contributors list. See the box with the hearts around? So that's an example of border art, and it's a really neat feature. I also learned a lot about designs, like inserting shapes. We had a writing club contest, and we had teacher judges, and on page 3 you can see that to highlight the winner of our contest, Francesca Tarbell, I made a shape, and for like second place, third place, I had a banner, and I highlighted all the places. And I also highlighted with shapes the fiction section on page 11, personal essays like college essays I highlighted with like a speech bubble on page 21. I also used a lot of clip art in this edition because I learned that there isn't a lot of copyright issues with clip art. There's no copyright issues because Publisher automatically gives access to clip art. Whereas if I if I used a picture from the internet and copied and pasted it, I would face copyright issues. So I learned a lot about that. I also learned about page borders, like, for example, on page 8, I separated each of the contest entries with borders, and it's a space filler, so that was a really neat feature as well. I learned about the drop cap feature. For example, on page 17, which just makes the first letter of each entry bigger, and I thought that was really cool. I learned a lot about pictures too. For example, text wrapping, like tightly wrapping the text around pictures. On page 23, I tightly wrapped the poems around the picture of the dog. I learned about cropping images, which is a good formatting feature, just to make pictures have a better appearance. And I learned about picture borders to highlight different pictures, like on page 27, the picture of the shadow. That's a good example of picture borders. So I really enjoyed the senior project. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was really good to, like, I've been interested in Publisher for a really long time, and I really enjoy working with Publisher. So I just loved researching more about Publisher. And for me, it was the most interesting topic of the school day. So that's what I enjoyed about the senior project. What I learned really advanced the literary magazine, and it also really made it easier to work with, made Publisher to work with. It also gave me really good computer skills for college and for the workforce. After high school, my top 2 colleges are Elms College and Assumption College. Both have a literary magazine, so I hope to continue writing for my school's literary magazine, and hopefully I can share my Publisher knowledge with the editors of that literary magazine and maybe publish in the future. I plan to be a speech pathologist, but hopefully, like in the future, I can use my Publisher skills to publish articles about topics of interest. Do you have any questions?
We have 3 minutes left. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Allison, first of all, I think nice job, but I think what you did to start up the group here was fantastic. I applaud you for that. Made a difference, so you should be proud of yourself for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. How many kids are in the writing group?
There's probably about 30. We made it a requirement this year to, everyone has to contribute to the literary magazine, so we have about like 25 to 30 students. Yeah.
Now, did you find that your experiences from, I guess like from the junior high with GT, did you find that, do you think your interests would have kept going in that direction if there wasn't that at the junior high level? Would you think that you would have carried something like this through? You know, as far as your interest in a literary magazine and making it become more than what it was, because you really took it to a different level because it wasn't there before.
Oh yeah, I would have. Yeah, and hopefully I can continue with, continue writing like in the future and in college, and hopefully like even like during my adult life.
Is the group going to continue after you go, you think?
Hopefully, yeah. We have a group that's interested in continuing, and we have like a subcommittee that consists of underclassmen. So hopefully they can continue publishing in the future, and hopefully the writing club can also continue.
Are you sharing this with them?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, Miss Apranovich will have that in her room for them. Yeah,
no,
it'll be useful for them, definitely.
Because there's a lot in here no one's going to understand, so
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, if you want, you can keep the copies of the magazine. So we worked really hard on that.
It's kind of interesting too that you're taking something that's in your mind, you're putting it down on paper, but then the reality is somehow it's got to get into a form that can be legible, easily, followed along, and so it's that kind of pragmatic side of the creativity, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what you take, and you said, hey, I gotta make it so that someone can actually read it and follow this along. Someone can produce this, right?
Yeah, it's really fun to make the literary magazine. It really is, and it just I really like to write because it puts your thoughts to life, and our ideas just get distributed to the school, and it's really fun too for other students to read our work.
And actually, going into speech, you'll be amazed at how much just you having your imagination and getting words on paper will help, especially if you're working with younger people, and like little kids, having them get that word retrieval out and having them being
Yeah.
able to express what's inside and use, varied language and texture with that. I see that'll take you a long way too.
Yeah.
Which is great.